starting out with a show of hands. We're going to just ask people, how many people have heard of the term microaggressions? And then what does it mean? Anybody want to take a stab at what does it mean? I mean, you hear it.
Right there, but.
Well, don't. All right, you can bring it if you want to. No, but people do, it's one of those terms that really, I think, over the last like 2 to 3 years, like you hear all the time about what it is. And I think some people kind of know about it and some people don't, but sort of understanding it. So on page 94, we can really talk about what it is. There are subtle forms of that end up having great disrespect, and they're usually small events that are hard to prove. And what's very interesting, they happen. There's a gentleman by the name, you guys may have heard of him, Daryl Wingsu, who is really, really, really hot, and he's a professor, I believe, at Columbia, and he's done a lot of research. He does a lot of talks and a lot of articles, and I think his stuff is really, really good. And he kind of has a way of kind of framing what microaggressions are. And here's what he says: they're brief, they're everyday, they're slights. They end up being insults and really kind of indignities, and they're denigrating messages. But the whole issue is that people may not even realize that they're doing this. Okay, and other people may look at it and say, "Wait, how could you not know that I feel this way, or how could you know you're not doing it?" And he says something also really important, because understanding this from a diversity issue is really important, because as you know, these are really emotional topics, and they can spark a lot of anger and conflict and misunderstanding, both in the classroom as well as in the workplace, which we're concerned about here.
Just to do a real quick thing.
Yeah.
So, for example, you talk about the election. So, Donald Trump's trying to court the African American community, right?
Yeah.
But then he makes a comment that says that whether you think were good periods of time. These are, I thought the 80s were.
He thought what?
He thought the 1980s was a great time.
Yeah.
But he also thought the 1700s and 1800s were a good time. Now, if you just said that to a black person,
Yeah.
were any of those times good for black people? No. It's when the war on drugs occurred in the 1980s, and blacks started getting disproportionate jail terms and whatnot. And yet you want to court a community, and you're not even sensitive to the things that are sensitive to them.
Right.
I mean, and it was like this is like the biggest microaggression. Everyone should have been all over this. In terms of, when people want to give, I don't understand microaggression. To me, that's just a classic example.
It was a micro tsunami.
Micro-tsunami. Seriously, that's a nice term, micro-tsunami. We have to remember that.
I'm sorry, I don't want to get you up here.
No, okay, you just said something that I think, again, we got to be prepared as trainers, because, as facilitators, because I anticipate, again, that people are, especially as the word gets around what we're talking about, or there's some people that are going to come because they want to do that. There are going to be some people that want to come because they want to agitate a little bit, but there are going to be some people that are going to hear things and they truly want to know more about it. So I think you got to be ready for the dialogue. And like I said, given what's going on out there, I think we just have to be ready for that. And also, to be honest with you, the other thing we've got to be ready for is, if it goes, sometimes people get really, really, onto it, and you can't get them off, and they have a bandstand and they want to get to it. That's also where our facilitation skills have to come in and say, I really hear what you're saying, Jonathan, and that's a very interesting point. Unfortunately, we're going to have to move on right now, but if you want to talk to me more about it at the break, or I'll stay around afterwards, can do that.
It's important.
Okay, and if they come back at you, you say, I really understand this is an important issue, but we've got a few other things that we really have to get at, so we're going to have to move on. So that's the kind of thing, and it's not an easy thing if you're not comfortable doing it, but you have to do it in terms of moving that on. Go ahead, Sam.
So we haven't talked about parking lots yet, or the parking space.
Yeah.
And that's a really good time, that when an issue keeps surfacing, but you don't have the time or capacity to address it, having a white flip chart up that you just say, okay, I hear you,
That's a good one.
that's
That's a
great.
good one. I didn't even
Let's
think
put
about
it on the parking lot, and that's something that I'll get, either you get back to them personally.
We'll try to get to, we'll see if we can have time to get to it or whatever, but at least that's a very excellent, that's a great, excellent thing. I'm going to incorporate that because that is an excellent way of also doing it. And you may or may not get back to it. If you can, that's fine.
Well, you
Even
may-
at the end, if you don't get, if you aren't able to just say, I'm really sorry, Jonathan, we didn't get to your parking lot issue, but I can still talk to you afterwards.
Right,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
But you have to
Just
make
make
people
sure.
feel validated, and then don't feel, in a moment, we're gonna have one of our case studies where, people kind of just shy away from the issue and don't really want to talk about it, but.
If it goes in the parking lot, you should address it at least sometime, if it's on that list.
So the
sometime.
thing about microaggressions that I think is important for people to know is sometimes, not always, but sometimes, many times, people are unaware that they are committing the microaggressions. And, in the context of what we're talking, particularly as it comes to race and gender, that these are well-intentioned people, whether it be well-intentioned white people or well-intentioned men talking to women or vice versa, but they're not totally aware of the hidden messages that they're communicating. And some people don't want to be aware of it, and some people are just horrified that they just didn't even realize that. And I think that's an important distinction, because to me, it's almost like if you commit that and then you sort of tell people that you committed something, and they are like, oh my God, I had no idea, and they're apologetic versus, well, if I made you uncomfortable, well, all right, I'm sorry, I guess, I don't know, but, sometimes we just have to be uncomfortable with being uncomfortable, So it really depends upon how people are coming at you, I think, in terms of the unawareness. And again, this is a key thing, and Sue talks about this a lot, that they're usually outside the level of consciousness and awareness of the perpetrator. Not always, but sometimes, many times they are. This is also, I think, an important thing, too, about microaggressions, because you always think about it as just the things that people say, but microaggressions, there are a few different levels. One is, it's what you might say verbally, and that's usually what we hear, but also some of those messages are not so subtle. It's like when you tell a person, let's say it's an Asian person or something like that, wow, you sure do speak good English. Where'd you learn how to speak English? Well, I was born and raised in Newton, Massachusetts, and I went to schools there, and that's where I learned. But you're automatically assuming, because this person, is Asian and looks to be Asian, that, well, gee, I guess, they didn't, English may not be their first language, and, and also, where did they get to speak English that well, So that's an important piece. So it could be something verbal that you're saying. It can also be something that's nonverbal, and, we all, I think, have some of these things. Like if you're walking down the street, say, and again, you hear black men talking about this all the time, or in an elevator that, they see people like, women clutching their purses or whatever, or walking to the other side of the street, that those kinds of things. And I know for me, who I kind of, try to be Miss Diversity, I know that I, sometimes have challenges too, and I can remember that especially right around, and this happened really around September 11th, and I don't know, I was doing a lot of traveling back then because I had a book out and I was going around the country promoting it, and I remember they had this one Valentine's Day where they had said, be on the lookout, because, this is when they had the yellows and the oranges and the green alerts or whatever, you know what I mean? And they said, just be careful, we think there might be something happening. I happen to be in Washington, D.C., in Washington, Reagan, like coming back home, and I saw like this, first of all, I saw a guy, a Muslim-looking guy with a turban go by. And then he had some like little something, somebody else was like right behind him. And then it was like a string of people like with babies and baby carriages, and then some other people. And I remember like my reaction was, oh boy, I don't know, maybe I should like take another flight or something like that. So I had to catch myself, because it was like I was committing a microaggression, and of course the people were fine. It had nothing to do with that. But that's the type of microaggressions that we may come across. Environmentally, and I think this is also a key microaggression, that people have certain symbols that mean a lot to them. That whole Confederate flag thing. Okay, another one is, and again, it's just so controversial, but Native Americans and Indians, Native Americans, they do not like people using like the Washington Redskins. or, you're on the warpath and you're, whatever, and that's your mascot or whatever, it's an Indian on the warpath. They don't like that. But of course, the NBA is not, well, that's football, NFL, thank you. The NFL is not, they're saying, we hear you, but we're gonna still go and move forward with that. And there still are people that are saying, don't want to do that. But there are things that are environmentally, SWAT stickers or whatever, that may also be, forms of microaggressions. And I think that's really important because I think most people only think it's about what's coming out of people's mouths around them. You look like, were you going to say something? You keep like, maybe, no? Okay, all right, good. All right, that's good. Okay, so the other thing is, I think, in terms of people being unaware of it, is that a lot of people really get offended when you talk about this because they think they're really, look, my parents were, were out there protesting and helping, people back when it wasn't even right, and I was, like you said, I was at my mother's breast, like, doing this or whatever. Like, why would you think that I would even, think that way? That's not like how I am. And so, so there are two sides of it because people can become very upset about that you're calling me racist or you're calling me sexist or whatever, and really that's not my intentions, and I really don't like that you're calling me that. So, so again, these are things that just to kind of be aware of. And again, as we said, we're talking about this as it relates to race and gender in this workshop. We talked about that. Okay, so this is something, and Sandra's really big on this, and she talks about a lot about this, and that is the cumulative effect. So what happens with microaggressions for people of color especially, and women too, but a lot of times you hear this in the literature about people of color. These things happen over and over again, and quite honestly, they happen on a daily basis, and with some people. And it's just like enough is they're small things. But it's just one more thing happens and then you blow up and it becomes a big thing. So it's really the accumulation or the cumulative effect that really makes these things really explosive and why often people do explode. And it causes anger, sensitivity, lack of confidence, feelings of unworthiness and invisibility, importance and underperformance. So really getting at what does this do to individuals? Is that it's not just that they feel offended, there are serious consequences to what that is, and also the performance, whether it be in the classroom or the performance, as an employee at work, that it can really impact what they're doing. And, the other thing is that you find that these also can, the person can feel that fairness is impaired, and that there's not equity. So, that you might not be grading me the same way that you're grading, Sally Sue, or you're not treating me, effectively in my performance appraisal as an employee. So those are some of the unintended, I think, consequences of microaggressions. So I'm just wondering, does anyone ever, have any of you ever come across microaggressions or any examples of microaggressions that are out there?
So, I had at one point in time worked at DCF and was doing evaluations of kids who were alleged abuse victims. And this is not about the abuse. I was sitting with a 17-year-old actually, whose mother was hitting her. And she was brown skinned, and I called her African American. And she said, I'm from the Bahamas.
Yep.
And I was like,
she's not African American.
What? How do you say that? And I tried to make a joke out of it, and I said, I'm sorry. First I started with, I'm sorry. How do you say that? Is it Bahamian? And she laughed with me, and I was like, okay, I think I dodged a bullet, but I felt really bad. And it made me, and I said, so I need to remember, where were you born?
Right.
Where did you grow up?
Right.
Which was in my training.
Right. No, that's an important thing.
And she laughed about it, but she was 17.
Well, but some people are not 17 and really don't like that. Do you know why some people, like if she's from the Bahamas or maybe Nigeria or Jamaica or somewhere, it's like, you call me African American, why would they be offended by that?
Because they're not.
They're not African American. African Americans are people who were born in North America or South America and are American. You know, if I'm born in the Caribbean or I'm born in Africa or Nigeria, I am not African.
Actually, South American blacks are not African American.
Okay.
They're actually from the country that they are from.
Well, can I just say that's the other piece of it, okay? So, we have a way of classifying people here, but the rest of the world, and we got at some of it in the video earlier today, that's a really important thing. The vast majority of people outside of this country do not use terms of race to describe people and or where they are, or, you know, if you say, you know, yeah, that was a black guy, or that was a white guy, or, you know what I mean? Or the Asian kid or something like that. They don't use that. They use a few things. One is it's where regionally I may be from, or the country that I may be from, and also it can be, you know, Sandra and I think we've talked about this before. Like I can remember being in Italy, and then near Sicily, and calling the Sicilians Italian. I'm not Italian. I'm not Italian. Don't call me Italian. I'm Sicilian. Okay. It's like, so, you know, people. The point, if you remember, of the earlier thing was, it's how do people want to be called? But also recognizing that the terms Hispanic, Latino, those are terms that we use that quite often the rest of the world doesn't use. And sometimes if people are distinguishing people outside of this country, it's more along socioeconomic lines than it is around, you know, race, the color, and gender. Okay,
Well, I can tell you, this has happened to me. I was being introduced to several people from outside of Leslie, and the person who was introducing me kept referring to me as John Jefferson. And I'm like, I never use John Jefferson, that is not my name. And so every time the individual would introduce me, I would reintroduce myself to say, my name is Jonathan. Call me Jonathan.
Right.
Or Dr. Jefferson.
Right. Right.
But the thing was, the person never, ever asked my permission, nor ever asked what I wanted to be called. Just assumed. And the problem is, the person is a senior administrator.
Wow.
But yeah, so, and I think the person may have gotten the point after the third time when I reintroduced myself.
It's so simple. Listen to what people say and how they refer to themselves. And if someone says, I'm not a Johnny or a John, I'm a Jonathan,
Right.
okay, then you call him Jonathan. Okay,
Yeah.
don't do that. Which kind of gives, you know, us a few other examples of mistaking a person for a certain race from another person of that race, you know, the whole we all look alike kind of thing. Constantly mispronouncing a person's name or making up a nickname. This is a pet peeve of mine, you know what I mean? Especially if people have a long name or a very, what we would call foreign sounding name. And it's like, I don't even bother to try to say what your name is. I just, you know, I'm giving you the nickname. It's like, why are you giving me the nickname? That's not what I was born or what. And so if you're not going to take the time to learn just something simple like my name, what else are you not going to take the time to learn about me? So that's a really important one. Making a person of color, mistaking a person of color for the help or the valet, the housekeeper. I get this, it's funny, we were writing up you'll see our case in a little bit, and I was actually heading outside the country. I was going to Jamaica on vacation. And literally, we had just talked about, you know, the whole thing about people standing in line and people going in front of you sometimes. And, you know, I was dressed, I had my pearls on, I was all dressed up and decked out. And this person literally, like I was invisible, walked right in front of me. And all I could do was just laugh because it was funny to me because we had just, you know, talked about that as being like an invisible thing.
Oh, and it's so funny because that happened to me at the airport when I was going to visit my dad. And I said to the woman, I said, and she literally came from behind me with all her bags in front of me. And I'm like, where are you going? I said, excuse me, I'm next. And the guy at the counter is looking. So I handed him my ticket. I was like, and I thought about this class, I said, because that's never happened to me before.
Yeah,
I said, I'm invisible.
It's funny, I know this guy, and he's got dreads. I mean, we're talking like they're down almost to the floor, right? And he goes to the airport, he's flying first class. He goes to the airport, he's standing in line, and he will tell you all that he said. It always happens. People come and say, oh, I think you want to be in that line over there. They point to him to go into another line. So again, you know, they're innocent, but, you know, kind of even, I think, for us about microaggressions, It's about really understanding those things that you might think are like not a big deal, but they are a big deal. And unfortunately for certain people, it's like women in a classroom where, the professor will always, if the male student or the one, they'll call in the male, and it's like, or the man might say something and she says the same thing, but when she says it, it's like, I don't know. And then he says it's like, oh, that's brilliant. Women will tell you, like, that happens to me all the time, not me, but that happens to me all the time. So these are things that we just have to become more aware of, just because they're not in our reality, they are in the reality of other people. So that's really important about microaggressions. Any other microaggressions, or has anybody experienced anything here at Leslie that might be a microaggression?
We get a lot of students with name and pronoun issues.
I'm sorry?
Name and pronoun issues.
Yeah, talk about that, because that's actually something we should probably mention too.
A lot of students who, from the name they go by is not the name that might be on their real paperwork, and who might go by gender pronouns that are not the ones you would assume by looking at them or looking
Yeah.
at their class roster.
But that one is so hard. I mean, we do take the time to ask students what they want to be referred to, but I noticed that a number of people at Leslie now start, when they introduce themselves, give the pronouns they want to be referred
Right,
to.
yeah.
And that's what I'm going to pick up as a practice. I
Yeah.
have the students just refer
Yeah.
to the pronoun they want to be referred to.
And it's funny, because at Faculty Development Day, there's a whole other thing about inclusion in the classroom or whatever, especially for young people. It seems like that's becoming an increasingly important thing for people. And what people will say is, my name is Martha, and I do go by he and she pronouns, or something like that is what I hear people saying, so they know that it's okay, versus sort of being gender neutral in terms of how you speak. So that's a really important point.
In addition, this is my soapbox for a second, we encounter a lot of faculty who will reject they, them pronouns as a gender neutral singular in academic writing.
Say that again?
They'll reject they, them pronouns, like as if you're talking in third person plural,
Yeah.
to refer to a third person singular,
Yep.
which has been accepted by all the major academic associations as valid academic writing at this point.
Right.
But some people are stuck in their ways on that one. And
Meaning that they still only want you to refer to someone as he or she,
yeah.
versus like, so my generation used to do the he or she, and then it became like politically incorrect to do it, so you would say they or them, so.
But for third person.
Yeah, it's a third person plural, not
Yeah.
our first person.
singular.
Right.
So if I were to write, I'll say Cy, I was writing a case study on Cy was doing something or other, they went and did something.
Right. But it's not.
We're having faculty come back on that.
It's confusing, and so I think that you will get faculty that are going to push the grammar point, the
Right.
protocol
Right,
point,
right.
and the hard to read point. So it will take getting used to.
Yeah,
I think it's new
said
about
that.
1 to 2 years for those of us in the faculty.
Yeah.
So we're in transition on this.
All the more reason to bring it up.
issue.
You said the grammar, the protocol, I love the way you said that, and there's a
The
third
grammar, the
one.
protocol, and just the readability.
And the readability,
yes.
Because,
Side A is like, you're thinking, who else?
right, because, let's look at the other side. What students get confused is that the pronoun by which you want to be referenced is not the pronoun that you use when you're writing about someone else. So, in other words, when I tell my students, you have to use the pronoun references for the story that you're telling.
Right.
So if you're talking about a
Right.
straight person, then you use straight person pronouns. If you're talking about someone who goes by a different, if you're describing yourself and you go by a different pronoun, then you should use those pronouns, but you have to provide transition for the reader,
Right.
or else the reader is completely
The
confused.
distinction being a known source saying someone did something, they should, X, Y, or Z.
Well, see, but again, so in the old school, we're going to say
He or
someone
she.
did something, he or she
Did.
did.
Right.
And I think that the issue is that we still have to teach our students that that's an incorrect pronoun reference. However, when they're referring to themselves,
But
then
it is
they
correct.
do.
They as a singular is academically
It
correct.
hasn't gotten everywhere.
So can I just say,
No, this is my point. We're trying to get it out
yeah,
there.
can I just say, this is the point that I'm talking about, and for some people, they don't even have a clue of what you were
No.
talking about. I would say most people that are, I shouldn't trying to paint a broad brush.
No, but
I think a lot of older people.
our generation's not gonna
What
do
is he
it.
talking about? What is she talking
Yeah.
about? You know what I mean? And, but it is an important issue, and it's funny, I kind of sort of heard about it out there, but not really. I mean, but here, it's a really important issue. I can't tell you how many meetings I've been to where people will say that, or they will start, and they'll introduce themselves and they'll say, I use he, she pronouns, okay, something, something to that
But
effect.
this other thing about.
No, but the other thing about the language.
It's gonna be a long fight, because there are different types of grammarians.
Yes.
And what society's not looking at is the degree of grammarian and what you're going to be.
Right.
So what many professors do in their classroom, and I can tell you this is what I do in mine, is this is how we're gonna write in this classroom.
It's
And I-
GPA and MLA.
I understand, but this is how it's going to work in Jonathan's classroom.
But see,
And
this
you
is
can refer
exactly-
to,
this
and you
is
can
exactly
refer to
what I
yourself
said. Right.
by whichever pronoun you feel is appropriate.
Right.
And when you're writing standard English, this is the standard English that's appropriate in this classroom. And I can tell you that I'm not a minority on this.
But can I say, and again, we're not really dealing with something right now on having an inclusive classroom, but this is an important point, because there are people that are also going to argue as cited, well, I hear what you're saying, but I still feel I should be able to do that. It's my First Amendment right or whatever to do that. But what's to me is most important, I think, is really putting out there so people understand what the issues are and why people are getting so upset, or why people are going one way or the other. At least that's the way I look at it.
No.
And like you said, I mean, if you're dealing with kind of mainstream, kind of traditional things, and if you're trying to get a paper published by a publisher or whatever, what Jonathan is saying is like, that's 99% of the way it's gonna be. However, there also are the things where it's like, well, if we want this to change, when are we going to make a change, right? And so we need to do it. So that's just, I think, the kind of discussions that we're all, I think, having right now about these issues. So I just want to move on just really quickly, because we've got a few other things I want to cover. This is a good example of like how I just like cut you off and got so long. Okay, that was good, like that. Okay. So you said, well, what can be done about this whole thing of micro inequities? Well, there actually are a few things that can be done. It's all about knowledge and awareness, as we've talked about, like understanding what the issues are. Also feedback and dialogue. So, if you notice, I was asking Ty, well, can you tell me more about that? So that I can like really understand or get some feedback, what if I say so, what you said, if I say so-and-so, whatever, get the dialogue and feedback going. Training and development, which we're doing now. And also the whole issue of self-assessment. Where do I stand on these pronouns, or where do I stand on some of these issues? And, being clear, like, well, okay, I'm standing on this, but, I'm kind of understanding what they're saying. Or, gosh, I never thought of that way. I better start thinking that way. So it's just, I think it's more of an awareness of, like, what people are and where you fit in and how you are dealing with some of these issues, but also knowing that regardless of where you might fit in on some issues, so if you want to, wear your rebel hat with the Confederate flag, there may be some, I've been in South Carolina and I've seen the stores that have all this, and that's how that is, but that's not Boston. And that might be a whole different scenario, here, like, with that kind of thing. So just understanding like where you stand with certain things, okay? Any questions, comments? Okay, so we've done some talk, go ahead.
No, I was going to say
Go ahead.
that, we've been giving examples on race and gender, but class comes in here too.
Yes.
So I think, I was listening to NPR this morning about a guy who really feels that he's been oppressed because he's been excluded. I'm going to guess that's about economic loss, because that's what he talked about. I also know that the sort of hidden traumas of class and gender impact white men
Yes.
in ways that they will not talk about out loud,
Yep.
but they will react.
Yes,
So that a slight, like cutting in front of them in line, gets almost violent response, because there's trauma, there's socioeconomic oppression,
Right.
there's didn't finish school, learning disabilities,
right.
there's all kinds of stuff underneath the surface. And so I think that's where this gets a little complicated, to do the dance about people experience oppression. There's all
Right.
kinds of layers
Right.
of the
Right.
intersectionality.
Right.
But the other part of it is that people aren't talking about things with which they might have privilege in other contexts.
Yeah.
So if you're a white guy and you have
Yeah.
a terrible trauma history,
Right.
you're not gonna talk about it,
Right.
but you will assert white privilege.
Right. You know, and I have to say something, I do quite honestly, all the stuff that started to come out with the presidential election, it really, it is sparking, I mean, regardless of what side that you're on, it is making people talk, and it is making people come out of, you know, hiding on certain things, and certain issues that are really, really tough are coming out and have to be discussed. So I think you're gonna see this, like, I think we just are, regardless of who wins the election, I think that the, you know, the cat is out of the bag, Pandora's out of her box, you know, all those kinds of things.
It's true.
Those, so.
It's gonna take elegant skill, that's all I'm saying,
Yeah.
to
Yeah, but-
manage some of these issues.
But if you look back, if you carry what Catherine was saying one step further, one of the things that happens is that we have white men who have these traumas experienced, and the only venue they find to take it out on is on black people. And I'm not responsible for you not being able to use your privilege to get ahead, nor did I take your job that I'm qualified for, but you think you should have had because of your privilege. And so what and it's the economic game is played. Like when you look at the welfare rolls, just by sheer numbers, there have to be more white people on welfare than black people, because there's just not 15 million black people on welfare. And the welfare rolls are large, but they create this thing that, you know, these undeserving people need these things, and you need to take them away. And what many people who are oppressed don't realize is they're being duped into losing something that they're benefiting from, because they think they're taking it from someone who doesn't deserve it. And see, this intersectionality and these questions and these problems need to be addressed, because you see, that oppressed white man has way more common with that oppressed black man, but they won't talk to each other.
Right. Well, and again, that's what I'm saying. Okay, I think, like, what you even saying that, a year or two ago, most people would not have even, like, said that in an open place. But now, those kind of issues are coming up, and people are feeling comfortable. And I don't think it's a bad thing that we're at least, you know, bringing them up, but also the whole thing of, so what's the so what? Where do we take this? What do we do? Where's the dialogue? Where's this going to go? Or are you still going to be, you know, that way? It even matter because now you brought it up, and now I know what you think, okay?
And I like the
Because
fact
it was in
that,
'99, but that movement's kind of gone away. The '99 was trying to pick up on the fact that the '99 doesn't have a color. You know, but then the problem was that black people kept being abused, so Black Lives Matter had to come in,
Right.
and it diluted the '99. When the '99, the Black Lives Matter movement needs to come together.
I like the fact that you.
That's,
use
and I see signs like
intersectionality.
over there, like,
Yeah.
you know, but, because that's part of the issue, is that if people really kind of, you know, step back and looked at things and didn't see that through the lens of, you know, of a color or sex or gender or whatever, that they would see that they have more things in common, and
Martha,
that they
I-
banded together. Go ahead,
I
Sandy.
love the idea that, I mean, the fact that he used the word intersectionality in a sentence that just made total sense to me a few minutes ago. It's awesome.
Yeah.
You remember when you said it?
All right, so what we're going to do at this point, we are now at a point where we want to bring together our learning for the day. And so we're going to watch a video that our dear friend John worked with us on. He shot it, he edited, and you know, helped us also with the writing of it. And this video, what I want you to do is on page 14 of your handout, and this is what you're going to tell people, is I'm going to have you watch the video. And as you watch the video, you're going to see and witness some microaggressions. You're going to see and witness some of the themes that we've talked today around diversity and inclusion. And as you see those come up in our case, I'm going to ask you to maybe jot them down, because afterwards we're going to have a dialogue around them. And also we're going to get at the whole issue of how to have these difficult conversations, okay? So here we go.
Excuse me, I wasn't there. Hi, can I have a copy, please?
And your name?
My name's Patella. Hey, did you hear about the attack on Guatemala?
All right, everyone.
Hey, Professor, can we talk about what happened in Guatemala?
No, look, I'm sorry. We've got too much to do today. We're pretty far behind. There's been a lot of side discussions thanks to you. So we've actually got to focus on what we need to do in class today. So take out your notebooks and we'll get started, all right? So what is the significance of 1492? John?
This happens to me all the time.
Excuse me, Professor?
Oh, thanks so much. Here you go.
No, actually, I'm Patella from your cultural studies class.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I don't mean to ask you to be a waiter or anything, but since you're here, could you take that back to the kitchen for me?
No, that's okay. I'm not a waiter here. I actually work in the HR department.
Oh, yeah, right. This probably explains why you're taking my class at school. It's a good class. I hope you're getting something out of it, right? Like, it's worth coming to. Hey, did you get to talk to that guy Ben I was just talking to him? He's in the class. He's a good guy. Just promote to management. You should be more like Ben. Just talk to him after class sometimes. Get some notes.
Well, anyways, I'm here to talk about my low-grade paper.
Yeah, everybody wants to talk about their papers. What was your paper on? Was it immigration reform? Great topic.
No, that wasn't me. That was Hosea.
Oh, yeah, that kid. What did you write about?
I wrote about the one of Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter. I'm sick of Black Lives Matter. What's going on with this? Everybody, Black Lives Matter this, Black Lives Matter that. They're protesting. It's ridiculous. Your paper, I gotta tell you, Elaine, the tone was totally inappropriate. It was incredibly emotional. That paper was way over the top. I need you to rewrite that if you're gonna get a passing grade. I can't have that.
Actually, I want.
I know.
Excuse me, can you tell me how to get downtown?
Yeah,
How do you know this area so well?
I live here.
Oh, people like us usually can't afford to live here. Okay, go take my bus. Patella, is that you? Honey? Come tell me about your day. A day in the life of Patella.
Matt Nash is a ham.
He promised, right, John, he made me promise that when we show this, we have to tell people he really is not like that in real life. He said the only reason he would do it for us, right, John, is that if we really told people, I'm really not that way in real life. I said, okay, we will definitely make sure we tell people that when you do it. Okay, so a day in the life of Patella. So, what did you see? I'd be interested in hearing a little bit about what microaggressions did you observe, and also what can be done.
So first one.
And also, by the way, not just if there was other stuff too that from today's program that you also saw that you'd like to comment on. That would be good, Catherine.
Yeah, so she got cut in front of the line, she got the wrong name on the cup, several times she got Patty.
Even though she clearly said her name was Patella.
Yeah, not that hard to pronounce actually, just different.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, what else? Black Lives Matter is an important topic.
The instructor assumed that she was a waiter and was handing his plate for her to describe the way she was.
even when she said she wasn't. So she said, no, would just take this from me as if, she didn't matter.
Yeah, in the end, he suggested for her to be like Ben or refer to the other students as that kid. There was a power dynamics there.
Yeah.
And he disregarded emotion. And his non-scholarly, not valid. When he's way too emotional.
So you look like you want to get in there.
No, everyone's like, I got like 415 things written down here, and everyone's hitting these bases. It's kind of in line with Patty's, the cultural ignorance of her classmates, saying like, no, okay, you're talking about them all. We'll do that thing. More like Ben, assuming of the immigration paper, the policing of the emotion, obviously the stuff with you at the end.
No, that was an interesting, okay, the only reason I did that, the actor that was supposed to show up didn't show up, so John said, would you mind doing this? I said, all right, I'll do it. But there was an interesting thing, because you had two people of color there. Okay, what was the dynamic that was going on there?
I mean, you assume the shared experience probably didn't exist.
And like, what's she doing here? You're in,
Right, you invalidated her.
you're in Kane, or like, people like that don't usually happen. What are you doing here, right? And that was an interesting dynamic that we built into the case because, there also is that dynamic sometimes that's going on, with other people. And again, people have to watch that too.
Yeah, and it goes back to your point way back, not all people of color are the same or have the same experiences.
Right.
And so to show two people of color, experiencing a microaggression opens up the door to that conversation.
Yes, exactly. Other things that were,
But just some that are, I thought about the Guatemala thing, and I thought, that's one that's, it could be like jarring in one way, but in another way, it's so easy to address with your peers. It's like, well, so like somebody was killed in my country this morning or something like that.
So,
In some
okay, you say in terms of not bringing it into the classroom kind of thing?
Yeah, so, exactly.
I mean, I would feel like, in that, and this is me thinking, in that session, she might be disengaged from the lecture that day because she's thinking about this thing that happened in Guatemala, his family, and things like that. So even if he just acknowledged or created a space, obviously he's acting overly, his character didn't even, want to spend 10 seconds on it.
But okay, so let me just also bring something. Okay, so they talked about the culture. If you're talking about culture, he was really talking about like Columbus and what happened in 1492.
Which was so easy to involve in Guatemala into that conversation. It is so easy to do that. Because Columbus sailed past Guatemala.
Yeah. Oh, we got some real smart people in here. He could have himself past Guatemala. Yeah.
And kind of back too, it might be something that's easy in a singular instance to say, hey, so this thing happened, y'all should know about it. But it touches that cumulative effect thing too, like,
You're constantly
if it's the
educating your
fifth,
peers.
if it's the fifth thing that week,
Go away.
why do I have to be the one to keep
Right,
telling you
right,
about this?
right,
Because,
right.
oh, I'm a designated token, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Yeah.
And I will say, in the surveys that came out from your students, that was a huge problem, that they felt that too many times in their classes that because they were singled out as being, the only one, and it's like, oh, how do you feel about this, in the black community or whatever? And it's like, well, and then you don't say things like, well, something, I think you need to go and like do some studying up and come back and tell us what it is. And that's your assignment, young lady. You know what I mean? That kind of, no, seriously. I mean, these are things that really do happen. Versus like, well, aren't you the professor and aren't you supposed to be kind of weaving some of this into your discussion or whatever? Or aren't you? I don't know. So you want to say something?
No, I was just thinking, but I mean, I think I already said that.
Yeah.
But I agree.
Any other issues that you can think about that came up in the video?
Also, when she first came to the little cafeteria where her professor was, on the table, it had her salad, but it also said Patty on the sign.
Right. So she keeps getting her name like slaughtered. It's not Patty. My name is Patel, and she keeps telling that. So again, and again, I think the thing that it's really important about this in terms of like it's happened, these things are happening over and over and over again. And probably with her name, I bet you there are a lot of people, like maybe daily, that are calling her Patty rather than Patella. And, you know, she doesn't want to be a John, she wants to be a Jonathan, and she wants to be a Pat, she wants to be a Patty, she wants to be a Cat, right? And don't want to be Kathy, right?
Don't want to be Sandy,
Yeah.
don't want to be Sandra.
Yeah, that's right.